I remember when I signed up for my first account back in 2004. RuneScape was an exciting game back then, all about your ability to kill other players in the mysterious wilderness, or who had the most XP on their prestigious high scores. The focus around quick XP gain was quite addicting. Everyone wanted to become an internet celebrity like the Old Knight or Zezima, to be successful in what was quickly becoming one of the most popular MMOs in the world at the time. The top XP gainers became idols for the average player, most of whom were elementary school children at the time of RuneScape's peak in 2006. It got to the point where Zezima was even recognized by Cartoon Network on a list of influential child idols next to names like Avril Lavigne and John Cena. The game was focused around complicated XP feats. World records such as fastest gains in the shortest amount of time, 200 million XP in one skill at the time. Skill capes became a thing to show off for the lucky few who had reached the final level in a skill. Even PKing was about skilling gains to a degree. A popular theory was that players with level 1 defense could hit higher than someone who trained their defense, causing a storm of purists attempting to remain as low combat as possible but yet maximize their hits, creating a surge of players making new accounts and training them up to become epic fighting machines. People kept looking for the next best method to get your skills up high as fast as possible so they could return to the wilderness and enjoy the content they played RuneScape for. But finding any method above 200k XP an hour was a rarity. Not that people minded the slow skilling, as the fun you'd have in the end would be worth the grind. Interestingly, grinding wasn't really a very popular term back then. Instead, people would excuse a slow skill for being hard. But in reality, RuneScape wasn't a hard game when it got to its core gameplay with skilling. It was just about what you were willing to spend your time on. At least until the era of 2006, when one of the most famous skillers of all time, Zarfut, discovered tick manipulation and perfected it. Suddenly, skilling in RuneScape was hard. The idea of clicking on the right objects just at the right time, in the right order, in the right location, became the new meta of efficient skilling. And not everyone could do it. Getting the tick right was tricky at the time. Not for any other reason than it being a new concept and that most people who played RuneScape back then were still learning how to multiply numbers by 10. But those who managed to do it well became known as the most efficient players in history, which is weird to think about when all you really do is just click a tree and wait for it to disappear. RuneScape wasn't always this XP oriented though. During the first 3 years of the game, when the game was what we know as RuneScape Classic, the entire game was about PKing. Skilling was nothing but a side gig to arm your friends and yourself with armor and food to fight other players. The medieval army game that the Garrus had orchestrated quickly became hyper-successful, amassing over 500,000 signups in 6 months after RuneScape opened its doors in 2001. But something happened when Jagex introduced RuneScape 2 in March of 2004. Gaining levels was no longer just a requirement to play the content RuneScape had to offer. It became the main focus of the game on par with PKing, and when the wilderness and free trade was removed in late 2007, and PKing disappeared alongside it, all that was left was the grindy gameplay, with no goal to aim for other than a fancy cape. RuneScape had become a medieval cookie clicker. Other MMOs would surge past RuneScape in terms of entertainment from the second they were released. Games like World of Warcraft, shortly followed by Star Wars: The Old Republic and The Secret World, would be named better MMOs from the get-go due to the never-ending grind RuneScape quickly became known for. RuneScape started fading away into the shadows as a game once great. A game most people would recognize as something you played as a kid. The game where all you did was kill players and fish lobsters on Karamja with stupidly slow XP rates until you fell asleep in your chair. The game was dying. The player numbers were falling. It even became a running joke that RuneScape was dead, a reputation the game still holds 15 years later. But Jagex had no plans to go down without a fight. I mean, clearly. Hundreds of people working at Jagex were dependent on the game doing well. So they only had one option to save the company. They had to reinvent RuneScape. Jagex made a move already in 2009 to reduce the grind in the game, and introduced what they call social skilling, and what the players call AFK training. Over the next few years, Jagex continued adding in AFK methods as the highest XP gainers per hour, removing the need to be efficient and constantly clicking. The aim to make RuneScape less dependent on attention-taking repetitive tasks didn't fall in well with the player base, saying the achievements accomplished by the efficient players who mastered tick manipulation were being undermined by the improved AFK XP rates. When the Squeal of Fortune was released in 2012 and soon after started selling coins in XP, it was the final nail in the coffin for several high-profile skillers. Players like Zarfut left the game for this very purpose, believing the game was no longer keeping its integrity pure. Jagex was removing what RuneScape was all about: goals, achievements, XP. And they were right. Jagex was removing these key aspects from the game, changing the fundamentals RuneScape were built upon, creating a new game altogether, but that looks like, and I guess still was, RuneScape. The main game has received a lot of hate over the years for these changes. Not only from the old school community, nicknaming RuneScape as EasyScape due to our extremely fast XP gains, but also from our own community, almost every single week when a new overpowered treasure hunter promotion is introduced, chipping away another level of whatever pride around XP gains there is left. Jagex was purposely removing the grindier XP methods, adding improved rates to shorten the distance from a fresh account to the higher level content in the game. There was an underlying goal of removing the XP grind, and rather have RuneScape be modernized with a stronger focus on the content that truly showed off what the game had to offer: its epic lore-filled quests and diverse PvM bosses. I don't think anyone would disagree that the quests and bosses released the past decade have not only been unique, but they've stood out as incredible pieces of content, something you as a player can be proud to talk about with your friends. The release of the Evolution of Combat later in 2012 would be the first step into modernizing RuneScape to bring it up to level with other MMOs, being an update intended to introduce a much more interesting way of training your combat stats and experience PvM altogether. When the update was released, ModMMG stated the update was necessary for the long-term health of the game. Obviously, I don't have to talk about how badly the update was received on release, and Old School has of course been far more successful the past 6 years, proving the Evolution of Combat wasn't required for the game to survive like ModMMG predicted. But simply because they tried and failed doesn't mean the good intention wasn't there. Trial and error became the norm for RuneScape updates from then on. What we have today is a much different game than what RuneScape was 10 years ago. But to a degree, I feel like Jagex are well on their way in achieving what RuneScape should be about. Skilling is nothing but a pathway to the main content these days, and Jagex doesn't want to keep the players waiting for a long time to enjoy the content it has to offer. As a result, we have an adventure game that doesn't only make it so that new players aren't stuck grinding for days just to complete a quest, but it also caters to the players who's been around since 2006. The young children who once got interviewed by Cartoon Network and name-dropped Zezima over their dads are now adults and don't have the time to spend 16 hours a day grinding agility at under 70k XP per hour. Getting the levels to play new content isn't so bad, because it's within reach. RuneScape has become more inclusive for players of all ages. It's a game you can now play and feel like you're getting somewhere. With that view in mind, the new approach to XP seems quite pleasant. I'd even argue MTX doesn't seem too shabby either, allowing players to speed up the process to reach content they really want to play. Of course, bot XP still devalues the achievements that's been around for years. But as much as I'm personally against Bible XP and especially the gambling aspect of the current MTX system, looking at it from a singular new player perspective, I kinda get it. What Jagex is forgetting in this rather pleasant approach to modernize RuneScape as an MMO is the very key factor to any success: the customers. Making the game feel more up-to-date and less grindy wouldn't be so bad if the players didn't have the mindset of what RuneScape was in 2006, when the XP was the biggest deal around. Jagex are creating a game fit for 2021 and the new players who come along the way, but are ignoring the majority of the player base, who are long-time veterans still holding the 2006 mindset of XP being the most important detail. As long as Jagex keeps quiet about their intentions with increasing XP, none of that is ever going to change, and angry players will forever be a thing. And we're right to be angry. Jagex is seemingly out of nowhere messing with our beloved game that's been with us for so many years, and we're not being told why. Either it be about improving the long-term health of the game, or profits, which it likely is. We should be furious for not being included in these plans. What Jagex is doing wrong is what they have been doing wrong for the past decade. They're only accepting feedback within very limited borders. You can tell them what kind of content you want, as long as it's still related to engaging gameplay or the next best XP method. I'm not too convinced Jagex knows what the players expect, or truly understand why there are weekly rants on Reddit. Jagex shapes the updates based on what they want the game to be, not what the players believe the game is. And until proper communication about these kinds of changes happens, not bringing the player along for the ride and expecting them to just tag along will always be the wrong option in my book. I could obviously be wrong and Jagex is just slaughtering the game without flinching, but as a long-time veteran, I choose to reconsider my view of RuneScape, and view it as what it is today rather than what it used to be. Don't consider this a finished process though. As mentioned in my previous video about RuneScape's identity crisis, we've still got a long way to go to find out what RuneScape really is these days, both visually and internally. As long as you're enjoying the ride, the game is here to be whatever you want it to be. An escape from the struggle of the real world, or just something to keep you occupied while watching a good movie on Discord with your buddies. And whether or not that's through AFKing Divination Springs or exploring the 20 years of lore, it's all your RuneScape. Of course, this is just my theory about Jagex's approach to RuneScape these days. Maybe I missed something while thinking about this. Let me know what you think RuneScape's about in the comment section below. I can't wait to hear it. My name is Will Miss It, and I'll see you all later.